Tonight, I'm being joined by Deepti Naval. We've all known her as an actor par excellence. We've known her and seen her as a writer of poetry, short stories, a painter, many roles that she's played in real life as on screen. Tonight she's joining me as the author of this book, which is a memoir that has been penned by her. Deepti Naval, thank you very much for joining me on the NewsHour tonight. A country called childhood, that is how you've named your memoir. What's the mystery behind the name? Yes. A country called childhood?
This phrase actually comes from the book itself. You know, it's one of the passages has the phrase, a country called childhood, where we once lived and continue to feel nostalgic about. So that's where the title was picked up.
Did it come to you while you were writing your memoir? Did you have it in your mind before you started writing it? You know, childhood is something that we look at as a very uncomplicated phase of our life. What made you write this book on this theme called childhood?
Yes. Because I think I grew up in a very fascinating environment. In Amritsar in the late 50s and all of 60s. I left the place in 71 and I was a full-fledged teenager. I'd been through my teens over there. And one chunk of life had finished and then the next phase would begin. So it was like a place where we all lived at one time, and that is a country. It's like a country because it has all these so many aspects. So I called it, I mean, it just came about in my writing of it, and the phrase got picked up by the publisher saying we are going to call this book Country Called Childhood.
So Deepti Naval, how do you remember your childhood in Amritsar? You know, you've mentioned a lot about the pictures that have been clicked and a story through the pictures, and these pictures you know, of the locality, the photography was a privileged passion to pursue, you say, at that time. Who clicked these pictures and how had they become a part of your life?
No, not at that time. Yeah, I mean, there was just one photo studio around the corner. I think it was called a Prabhat Studio. That's where we used to go for our portraits, family photographs, family portraits. And then there was later another photo studio down on Queen's Road called Shivram Studio. But that's when we all became teenagers and we wanted to be photographed. You know, wo alag phase tha. But photography as such, no. Somebody or the other, I think in the family, owned, my father had a camera. It was a box camera. And somebody or the other must have been taking pictures every now and then. So I just had this whole collection of photographs, and then I've collected a lot more pictures from relatives, and so I have a huge collection now.
What is really the story that Deepti Naval is sharing with the world through this book? You know, simply, दिल की वो कौन सी बात है जो आप दुनिया के साथ शेयर करना चाहते हैं?
मैं बताना चाह रही हूँ कि जहाँ मैं पैदा हुई, जहाँ मैं पली बढ़ी, वो एक अलग ही दुनिया थी. वो आज एग्जिस्ट नहीं करती है. I want to share that with everyone. I just find it so fascinating. You know, the minute I moved away from Amritsar and I went off to America, I could look back and say, wow, that was quite fascinating what we lived. You know, the first 18, 19 years of my life. Because the kind of people they were around me, I mean, I used to observe them very keenly. The characters that were around me, I used to find them fascinating. And I thought this fascination for all that was around me, that's what I wanted to share with the readers. That's why instead of writing a typical autobiography like मैंने ये किया, फिर मैं वहाँ गई, फिर ये हुआ, फिर वो फिल्म मिली, फिर I somehow wanted to recreate the whole ambience of my childhood days for the reader, and that's why I call it more like taking the reader through those passages.
I also found something very interesting because on page 29 and 30, you write about growing up in Amritsar, and Chandravali, you mentioned, was the mosque next to your house, and azan ki आवाजें आती थी वहाँ से, and your father said their prayers never interrupted the havans that your family held. Tell us a bit about the thought and the experience.
Yes. It was just I mean, we used to hear the azan 5 times a day. सुबह उठते थे azan सुन के, and then घर में at home there was periodically, not every day, but I think on Sundays we used to have the havans, and my father was talking about when the masjid was flourishing. Before 47, during his time, he said we used to have our havans. Of course, in havans they were never. It's a very private affair. It's a Arya Samaji havan. वो घर में हो जाता था quietly. But he said that it never really. There was no clash. Never interfered. वो अपनी अजान करते थे और हम अपना and it was such a okay kind of coexistence.
The Jallianwala Bagh restoration project kicked up quite a storm where many people said that was a way to distort history. I want to ask you, how do you look, because you come from Amritsar, Jallianwala Bagh, and the entire story and the narrative around it is something that you must have grown up on. What do you make of it?
Yes, but why would it be a attempt to distort history? In fact, it has to be preserved, right? They shouldn't have beautified it. That's my only problem with the Jallianwala Bagh. They should have just left it as a place which is like a graveyard. I remember it like a graveyard when I was a kid. I don't think it should have been beautified or organized in such a way that people are just going and it destroys the sanctity of this monumental tragedy that happened there. It should be a reminder of the tragedy and nothing else. And there should be, in fact, complete silence as you move around. It should have been cordoned off. That is the only thing I didn't like. I don't think it is a attempt to distort history or anything. It's just beautification of the city. It works very well with Golden Temple, but not Jallianwala Bagh.
Deepti Naval, you've documented some of the most politically contentious moments in India's history. From the point of view of a child, how did you feel about the 1962 India-China War, 1965 the India-Pakistan War? From the vision point of a child, how did you see it?
Yeah, 62 war was something that was happening out there, but it wasn't directly affecting us, except for the patriotic songs that we would hear on the radio, and sometimes trucks passing by the city. But 65, the Pakistan war at Khemkaran border, that was very, very important. That we didn't realize the seriousness of things then. So we were kind of having so much fun during the war. Like I said earlier, that we were sort of so excited that something is happening. Because in my life as a child, I always heard stories about partition, about my mother's exodus from Burma during the World War II. when the Indian families, so many Indians fled Burma and walked across the Assam hills, Nagaland, and reached India, Punjab. And our life is so bland. There's nothing much to talk about. So I start the Pak War by writing that some jets fly over and there's an announcement on the radio, and we all kind of jump up and say, wow, war right here at our doorstep. Like, this is so exciting. It was so crazy. And then, of course, at the end of those 20 days, whatever it lasted, my father took us to Khemkaran border. He said, no, the children must understand, must know the reality of war. They must see what war actually does and what it is like.
I can't even begin to imagine what a child would have thought about seeing that stark reality.
Yeah.
Speaking of personal anecdotes, Deepti Naval, you've also mentioned a certain wonder pill that your sister introduced you to, which would help you stay up at night so that you could study. So tell us about this wonder pill.
Yeah, it was quite something. It was called methadone. It was sort of harmless. It just kept you awake another 8 hours or so, whatever, maybe 12 hours, and alert and all there and completely focused, except that when I had the pill, I was focused on dancing rather than studying. So yeah, it was the older girls used to take that on exam days.
Oh.
That's how I got to try it.
Yes, and so you've actually explored a lot of facets of life as an author and as a film person. Amazing, and may the journey continue. I think all women should work till their last day. That's what creativity is all about, and that's what the staying power of a woman is all about. Thank you very much, Deepti Naval, for joining me on the News Hour. Pleasure to speak with you.
Thank you.